On a cold March afternoon in 2003, a woman walking through a suburban street in Utah noticed something unusual. A bearded man in flowing robes walked ahead with two women. One of the women wore a veil that concealed most of her face. At first glance, nothing seemed strange, but then the woman looked again. There was something familiar about the veiled teenager, something she had seen countless times on television. For 9 months, America had searched for a missing girl named Elizabeth Smart. 9 months of dead ends, 9 months of fear, 9 months of wondering whether she was even alive. And now, standing in broad daylight just miles from where she had disappeared, was a girl who looked remarkably like her. What happened next would become one of the most astonishing recoveries in true crime history. Because Elizabeth Smart wasn't just alive, she had been hiding in plain sight. The Smart family lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, in a quiet neighborhood beneath the Wasatch Mountains. The area was considered safe. Children rode bicycles through the streets. Families left doors unlocked. Neighbors knew one another by name. Ed and Lois Smart had 6 children and were deeply involved in their community. Their daughter Elizabeth was 14 years old in June 2002. Friends described her as intelligent, kind, and mature beyond her years. She loved music. The harp was her passion. She practiced constantly and dreamed of performing professionally someday. Tall for her age, with long blonde hair and a warm smile, Elizabeth stood out naturally, but despite her confidence, she was still a typical teenager. She worried about school, argued with siblings, dreamed about the future. No one could have imagined that future would be interrupted in the most terrifying way possible. Months before Elizabeth disappeared, a handyman named Brian David Mitchell had worked at the Smart family home. Mitchell appeared unusual from the beginning. He had a long beard, wore robes, claimed to receive divine revelations. To some people he seemed eccentric, to others unsettling. Still, he occasionally found work doing odd jobs around Salt Lake City. The Smarts hired him briefly for yard work. The encounter seemed insignificant. Just another laborer passing through. But investigators would later discover that Mitchell had noticed Elizabeth during those visits. And once he did, he became obsessed. That obsession would soon evolve into a horrifying plan. June 5th, 2002. The Smart household settled into sleep. The evening had been completely ordinary. Children went to bed. Parents prepared for another workday. Nothing suggested danger was lurking outside. Around 2 a.m., Elizabeth slept in a bedroom she shared with her younger sister, Mary Catherine. The house was quiet. Then a sound shattered the silence. A man entered through a window. He moved carefully through the darkness. Inside the room, Elizabeth awoke to a nightmare. Standing over her bed was a stranger holding a knife. The blade glinted faintly in the darkness. He spoke calmly but firmly. If she made a sound, he said, her family would die. For a terrified 14-year-old girl, the threat felt completely real. Elizabeth obeyed. The intruder forced her from bed and led her outside. Just feet away, her younger sister remained frozen with fear. Mary Catherine watched the abduction unfold, but was too terrified to move. The man guided Elizabeth through the darkness and away from her home. Within minutes, she was gone. When the family discovered Elizabeth missing, chaos erupted. At first, they hoped she had somehow wandered away, but evidence quickly pointed elsewhere. The damaged window, the missing daughter, the frightened account from Mary Catherine. This wasn't a runaway case, this was a kidnapping. Police arrived immediately. Search teams flooded the neighborhood. Volunteers combed nearby parks and mountainsides. Helicopters scanned the area. Hours became days. Days became weeks. No sign of Elizabeth emerged. The case exploded across national media. Her smiling school photograph appeared everywhere. Television networks interrupted programming. Newspapers carried her image on front pages. America became invested in finding Elizabeth Smart. Yet despite enormous attention, investigators had almost nothing. No clear suspect, no ransom demand, no physical trail. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. Salt Lake City changed overnight. Parents refused to let children play outside alone. Doors remained locked. Residents watched strangers suspiciously. The idea that a child could be abducted directly from her bedroom shattered the community's sense of security. The Smart family became the emotional center of the crisis. Ed Smart appeared frequently in media interviews. His pain was impossible to miss. Every day without answers deepened the family's anguish. Lois Smart struggled to maintain hope while caring for her remaining children. The emotional toll was overwhelming, but neither parent gave up. They became relentless advocates for their missing daughter. As tips poured in from across the country, investigators chased hundreds of leads. Many seemed promising, most led nowhere. Some witnesses claimed they saw Elizabeth in neighboring states. Others reported suspicious men resembling known offenders. Police investigated registered sex offenders, examined family acquaintances, analyzed anonymous tips. Each possibility raised hope. Each dead end crushed it. Investigators faced enormous pressure. The entire nation wanted answers. Yet the case remained frustratingly stagnant. Then came one of the most significant missed opportunities in the investigation. Shortly after the abduction, Mary Catherine described the kidnapper's voice. The voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't immediately identify it. As time passed, another family member recalled something important. The voice resembled Brian David Mitchell, the handyman who had once worked at the house. The tip reached investigators, but amid thousands of leads, it failed to receive immediate priority. At the time, police focused on numerous other possibilities. Mitchell's name entered the system but did not trigger urgent action. Months later, investigators would realize how costly that delay had become. Because while authorities searched everywhere else, Elizabeth was still in Utah, alive and astonishingly close. What happened after Elizabeth's abduction remains one of the most disturbing aspects of the case. Mitchell did not take her hundreds of miles away. Instead, he brought her into camps hidden in the foothills surrounding Salt Lake City. For weeks, she remained frighteningly close to home, sometimes only a few miles away. Yet nobody found her. Mitchell had convinced himself he was a prophet chosen by God. He created bizarre religious doctrines that justified his actions. In his mind, Elizabeth was destined to become one of his wives. The delusion was profound and dangerous. Accompanying Mitchell was his wife, Wanda Barzee. Rather than helping Elizabeth escape, Barzee became an active participant in her captivity. Together they isolated the teenager psychologically. Elizabeth lived under constant threats. She was repeatedly told her family would be murdered if she attempted escape. Over time, fear became a powerful prison. Many people later wondered why Elizabeth didn't run when opportunities appeared. The answer lies in trauma. Victims of prolonged captivity often experience overwhelming fear, confusion, and psychological control. Elizabeth was a child. She believed resistance could cost lives. Her survival depended on compliance. So she endured day after day, week after week, month after month. One of the most astonishing elements of the case is that Elizabeth was seen by members of the public multiple times. Mitchell often moved openly through communities. He traveled with Elizabeth and Barzee. To avoid recognition, Elizabeth wore veils and oversized clothing. She kept her head down, rarely spoke. To strangers, she appeared to be another member of Mitchell's unusual group. Yet there were moments when discovery came painfully close. People reported seeing a young girl matching Elizabeth's description. Several tips reached authorities, but without confirmation, they faded into the endless flood of information. Meanwhile, Elizabeth remained trapped in a psychological nightmare, watching the world continue around her while believing escape was impossible. As summer turned into autumn and autumn became winter, optimism faded. Statistically, the outlook became grim. Most child abduction victims are either recovered quickly or not at all. 9 months without answers led many investigators to fear the worst. Privately, some wondered whether Elizabeth was still alive. Search efforts continued, media coverage persisted, but hope grew fragile. For the Smart family, every day brought uncertainty. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went. The empty chair at family gatherings became a constant reminder of loss. Yet they refused to stop believing. That determination would ultimately matter, because Elizabeth was still waiting to be found. On March 12, 2003, nearly 9 months after the abduction, a woman named Edna Runyon was shopping in Sandy, Utah. She noticed an unusual trio: a bearded man, a woman, a younger female wearing a veil. Something felt familiar. Runyon had followed the Elizabeth Smart case closely. The teenager's facial features seemed strikingly similar. The more she looked, the more convinced she became. She contacted authorities. Police responded quickly. An officer approached the group. At first, the veiled girl denied being Elizabeth. Years of threats and manipulation had conditioned her to protect herself. But officers persisted. Eventually, they separated her from Mitchell and Barzee. Then came the moment everyone had waited for. The girl revealed her identity. She was Elizabeth Smart, alive 9 months after disappearing from her bedroom, against staggering odds, alive. The announcement stunned the nation. News networks interrupted broadcasts. Families gathered around televisions. Investigators celebrated. The Smart family experienced a moment almost impossible to describe: relief, joy, disbelief. For months, they had prepared emotionally for the possibility that Elizabeth might never return. Now she was coming home. The reunion became one of the most emotional moments in modern true crime history. But recovery was only the beginning. Now investigators needed to understand exactly what had happened and ensure those responsible faced justice. Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee were immediately arrested. As authorities examined Mitchell's background, a disturbing picture emerged. His behavior had raised concerns for years. Multiple warning signs existed. Many people had encountered him. Few understood how dangerous he truly was. Mitchell's religious delusions became central to the case. He believed himself to be a prophet. He used scripture and fabricated revelations to justify criminal acts. Psychologists later analyzed how effectively he manipulated fear and belief to control Elizabeth. Barzee's role shocked many observers. Rather than protecting a child, she helped enforce captivity. Her participation shattered assumptions about who can become complicit in serious crimes. The road to justice proved lengthy. Mitchell's mental competency became a major issue. Years of legal proceedings followed. Psychological evaluations delayed trials repeatedly. Some critics argued Mitchell was exploiting the system. Others believed genuine mental illness played a role. The distinction mattered legally. Investigators, prosecutors, and Elizabeth's family endured years of waiting. Eventually, courts determined Mitchell was competent to stand trial. When proceedings finally moved forward, evidence against him was overwhelming. Elizabeth testified courageously. Her account revealed extraordinary resilience. She described the threats, the isolation, the psychological control. The courtroom listened in silence. Mitchell was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Barzee also received a prison sentence for her role. justice had arrived, but healing would take much longer. The Elizabeth Smart case fascinated psychologists because it demonstrated how powerful coercive control can become. Many people asked why she didn't run, why she didn't scream, why she appeared compliant. Experts explained that trauma changes behavior dramatically. Victims often prioritize survival over resistance. Fear becomes all-consuming. Threats feel real. Every decision is filtered through danger. Elizabeth later explained that she believed any attempt to escape could result in death, not only for herself, but for her family. Understanding that fear helps explain her actions and challenges common misconceptions about victims. What made Elizabeth's story remarkable wasn't simply that she survived, it was how she rebuilt her life afterward. Many survivors struggle for years in private. Elizabeth chose a different path. She became an advocate, a public speaker, a voice for victims. Rather than allowing the crime to define her, she transformed her experience into purpose. Her courage inspired millions. She helped educate law enforcement, supported missing children initiatives, advocated for survivors worldwide. The frightened 14-year-old taken from her bedroom eventually became a symbol of resilience. The case exposed critical investigative lessons. Authorities recognized the importance of rapidly prioritizing witness observations. The overlooked clue involving Mitchell's voice became a powerful example. Investigators also learned more about trauma responses among kidnapping victims. Public awareness regarding child abduction changed significantly. Communities became more vigilant. Law enforcement improved coordination. Parents across America re-evaluated home security. The case left a lasting impact far beyond Utah. Many true crime stories end in tragedy. This one almost did. For 9 months, the odds seemed impossible. Yet Elizabeth returned home. Her recovery remains one of the most extraordinary outcomes in criminal history. The case contains every element of a gripping mystery: a nighttime abduction, a hidden suspect, missed clues, psychological manipulation, a dramatic breakthrough, and an ending few thought possible. But at its heart, this isn't merely a crime story. It's a survival story, a story about courage in unimaginable circumstances, a story about a family that refused to give up hope, and a reminder that even in the darkest cases, miracles sometimes happen. The abduction of Elizabeth Smart terrified America because it shattered the belief that home is always safe. A child was taken from her own bedroom. An entire nation searched. Months passed without answers, yet against every expectation, Elizabeth survived and came home. Her case remains one of the most remarkable kidnapping investigations ever solved, not because of its horror alone, but because of its outcome. Today, Elizabeth Smart's legacy is not defined by the crime committed against her. It is defined by her resilience, her advocacy, and her determination to help others find hope after trauma. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Elizabeth Smart case, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime documentaries, solved mysteries, kidnapping cases, criminal investigations, and survivor stories. Share your thoughts below and let us know which case we should cover next. Your support helps keep important stories alive and ensures that victims, survivors, and their families are never forgotten.